What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Varsity Overland channel. Behind me is my 2021 Colorado ZR2, and in about 2 weeks I'll be able to officially say that I have owned my ZR2 for an entire year. And with that in mind, I can look back on all my travels and question whether or not it was worth it. Do I regret buying my Colorado ZR2? Short answer, no. Long answer, maybe. Stick around and I will explain. People, so I have owned my Chevy Colorado ZR2 for an entire year now, which is really weird. I feel like I just bought the thing, but I gotta say, after owning it for a year, I love the truck. I actually do. I really enjoy the truck, and I have not had any issue with it at all, despite, quite a few people telling me online that I should expect a lot of maintenance issues or anything related to the matter. I'm at 1 year. I've put just under 22,000 miles on the truck. It says 21,900 right now, so 21,900. And like I said before, it's been on a couple pretty decent trips. But all that being said, the truck is very capable, but it's because of its capability that I question. Did I need to buy the ZR2? Based on what I know it can do, but what I've used it for, did I need to buy the ZR2? And that's where the maybe comes from. That's where the possible regret comes from. I love the truck, no issues, and it's been serving me very well. But if I were to go back in time and have a conversation with myself from January of 2021, would I tell myself to look at a different truck? A few months back, I made a video titled "Why I Chose a ZR2," and in the subtext of that video, I put why I picked a ZR2 over a Toyota Tacoma or over a GMC Canyon. Okay, specifically talking about TRD off-roads and AT4 trims of each truck. And if you are interested in seeing that video, why I initially chose the ZR2, because all of the information still stands true, that is why I chose the ZR2. Check out this video really quick on my channel, but do yourself a favor and fast forward to like the 10-minute mark, because I don't say anything important until the 10-minute mark. My bad. If you see anything from that video or you see anything on the truck earlier in this video that you happen to like, you can also check out this video where I talk about all the mods that I did. But each of those videos was a few months back. So I'm at the 1 year mark. And I talked about why I got the ZR2 over the Toyota Tacoma or the GMC Canyon, and I listed a lot of good reasons. They were all true reasons for me. Maybe you didn't agree with them. I did have a couple keyboard warriors tell me, that I made a mistake, and definitely gave me a piece of their mind, and that's fine. It's the internet. Everyone's got their own opinion. I get it, and I'm not offended. It's fine. Like, it is what it is. But I listed a bunch of stuff from that video, as far as the cost, as far as the suspension, the protection, the performance of the vehicle, the ground clearance, approach angles, everything, right? But looking back at my year with this truck, knowing that I had all those lists of reasons why I bought it in the first place, looking back at my year, did all of those things really make a difference? Did I really need those things for what I did with this truck? If you've been following my Instagram account at all, if you've been following this channel at all, I've done plenty with the truck. I've been able to take it to I think about 20 different states, camp in almost all 20 of those states, take it on a couple UHV trails, test out the kind of like the flexion of the suspension, test out the, unfortunately in some situations, test out the underbody protection with those skid plates. But all that being said, did I need all those bells and whistles I talked about a few months back? Did I need everything that I said was awesome about the ZR2 in order to accomplish what I have accomplished over this past year? And unfortunately, I'm leaning a little bit towards no, I didn't need all that stuff. So, you know, I'm kind of hoping that maybe someone who's interested in getting a new truck or getting a new vehicle at all for overlanding or traveling, off-roading, possible, you know, camping kind of stuff, I'm hoping that someone who is in that situation now, if they see this video, they might be able to reconsider some of their points. I'm going to go over three big things. All right. Number one is the cost involved, the price of the truck. Number two is the suspension, and number three is the aftermarket community, or the aftermarket parts for the vehicle. So starting right off the bat, first thing is the cost of the vehicle. All right. Now, I'm not going to be one of those YouTubers that talks about, if I could go back in time, I would tell myself to wait for the new Bronco, or I'd tell myself to wait for something I couldn't afford at the time, you know, or something that I never actually looked at a year ago. A year ago, January, I was physically in person at a dealership, specifically looking at Tacoma TRD off-roads. I even test drove one. I was talking to and looking at GMC Canyon AT4, and actually the sleeper of the list, which is where the surprise comes in, I was also looking at a Toyota Tacoma TRD Sport. We were at a dealership, and I'm looking around, and at that point in time, I had been settled on a Tacoma TRD off-road. Like that's what I was doing. 100% I was getting it, and 100% I was definitely going to go for the cement color, just because it was really, you know, it was really catching my eye. And then out of nowhere, I'm at the dealership, I'm looking around, I'm talking, you know, we're talking to some of the reps and stuff, and I go off on my own for a little bit, and I see an army green long bed Tacoma TRD Sport. And I saw it, and it was that one moment, and a lot of people have been in this situation at dealerships. You have something in mind, but then there's that one moment where you see something else, and you're like, oh, this is making me reconsider everything that I had planned here. And to be honest, it started with the color, all right? And don't tell me color doesn't matter to you when you're looking at a car, right? I mean, there's some high percentage of people that buy the car simply because the color. I wasn't about to buy a car for the color, but the color was awesome. I love army green on the Toyota Tacoma. So I saw it, then I saw the long bed as well, and it was the only one on the lot that had a long bed. So then I'm thinking about the storage, then I'm thinking about the rooftop tent, because the short bed, the rooftop tent, because of the length of our iCamper, always has to go up over the cab as well as the bed. But with a long bed, maybe it'd be able to sit just over the bed. So all these things started going through my mind. So the TRD Sport Tacoma, the 2021 TRD Sport Tacoma, was actually the sleeper here. And that is where my consideration comes in. That's where my possible regret for this truck comes in. If I could go back in time, I would tell myself to ignore the TRD off-road. I would tell myself to ignore, you know, the AT4. And unfortunately, I might even tell myself to ignore the ZR2 and to go for that Toyota Tacoma TRD Sport. Now, we're talking about pricing. So where does it all fall into play with pricing? Well, of all the four trucks I just listed, this one was the most expensive. Whether you're looking at MSRP or you're looking at markups, I know that markups are kind of like a problem problem right now, and a year ago they were definitely a problem. But the ZR2 was the most expensive at the time, and I believe it's still the most expensive, even if it's just by a little bit. So if I'm talking about cost, as soon as I cut out the ZR2, any of the other three vehicles would have been a little bit cheaper. But if you look at Tacomas specifically, just MSRP alone, you can Google it. The TRD off-road Tacoma's MSRP is like $1,000. It could be just a little over or under, but it's I think it's actually $1,000 more for the off-road versus the TRD Sport. So they're saving a little bit of money right there just based on the price difference. So there's a lot of other reasons. I'm talking about pricing right now. So if I had to go back in time just based on pricing, would I have gone with the ZR2? No, I would have went with the Toyota Tacoma TRD Sport. Okay, now from here we can get into, some of the other reasons why, other than pricing alone, the TRD Sport is actually pretty capable, and it would have most likely held up just fine for what I put this ZR2 through over the past year. So number 2 on my list was the suspension, and really just kind of like the overall capability of a truck. ZR2, insanely capable, right? Those DSSV shocks, no issues. And I know it's going to be hard for me to kind of like speak towards, a TRD Sport, a Tacoma's suspension when I don't physically have it in person to like compare and contrast. But if we're being honest with ourselves, a Toyota Tacoma TRD Sport, it's still a 4-wheel drive capable truck, okay? And just because it doesn't have the TRD off-road sticker on it, and just because it doesn't have the like specifically tuned off-road suspension, doesn't mean it can't go off-road. You can find plenty of people online with Instagram, with YouTube, any social media account. Plenty of people who have taken the TRD Sport off-road. Okay, is it going to be rock crawling? Probably not. Was I rock crawling though? No, I wasn't. Okay, some of the OHV trails that I did I get up on 3 wheels occasionally? I think there were like 2 occasions when I got up on 3 wheels with this truck. So in those instances, I don't know. I don't know what would happen. Could I have avoided those situations though? Yeah. But a Toyota Tacoma TRD Sport with its suspension, I think, would be just fine. Going off of some of the easier OHV trails, at least the OHV trails I did, and the Forest Service roads and the national parks, and also keeping in mind, looking back at it all now, if one of my major deciding factors for this truck was its off-road suspension, I then took that off-road suspension and put it on the road, on pavement, for probably over 75% of the past year. And you need to really consider that when you're looking at a truck. How much off-roading are you really doing if one of your justifications is its suspension? With the TRD Sport, its suspension is tuned for road travel. And especially when we went across the country, we went from the East Coast to the West Coast, Connecticut, all the way over to Southern California. Then we took Route 1 up the coast through Oregon into Washington, and then we took the northern part of the country all the way back. So much of that trip was on pavement, either highway or like 2-lane interstate. And the suspension for road travel probably could have been a lot different than the suspension on this truck. I didn't have trouble with the suspension on this truck, but I'm having a hard time now saying that one of my justifications was these DSSV shocks. All that road driving, all that highway driving, all the pavement, having a road tuned suspension on a TRD Sport might have actually made more sense. just simply because I said these DSSV shocks were such a big deal and everything. They held great. Like I said, I don't want anyone to misinterpret this. The road travel was fine. But those shocks, that suspension, I think definitely made this truck more expensive. So was it necessary? And could I have saved costs going with something else? I think yes, I could have. And the capability of the TRD Sport doing what off-road travel that we did, off-road trails that we did, when compared to this truck, I think that the Sport would have held up just fine. All right, so the last piece of this puzzle is the aftermarket community, or the aftermarket parts for a ZR2 versus a Toyota Tacoma. And it really just boils down to aftermarket Chevy versus aftermarket Toyota. And I knew this going into the whole buying process a year ago. I knew aftermarket Toyota is huge. Okay, there is no shortage of parts or information regarding aftermarket Toyota. I think even though I knew that, I kind of wanted to go more of a unique route. I wanted to do something that wasn't super popular, all right, which is a little bit of the reason why I went with the ZR2 anyway, just because you don't see a whole lot of ZR2s on the road. So we're talking about possibly going with a Tacoma TRD Sport instead. And the aftermarket support would have been a lot different. There's just a lot more available in the Toyota world than there is in the Chevy world. I haven't had a hard time. I mean, I still do window shopping, and I still see things online that I'm like, ooh, I'll keep that in mind. Chevy does have some items, but one of the biggest concerns is like my front bumper. In my video from a few months ago as to why I got the ZR2, one of my big reasons was the wheel cutouts in the front and the approach angle, and how it doesn't immediately make me want to swap the front bumper. I don't need to in order for its capability and its approach angle. And all that's still true. I still believe the front of this truck, OEM, is a lot better than the front of a Tacoma. If we're talking about a TRD Sport, you can bet I would be ripping out that air dam right off the bat off of a TRD Sport, which is fine, which is easy, you know what I mean? And that's not even anything to even blink at. But when you break it down, and I start to break it down, I start to look at possible front bumpers for the ZR2, especially the 2021 ZR2, which has a brand new face. There is not a lot to choose from. And part of me is even getting to the point where I'm thinking, well, if I'm going to get a front bumper, right now my only options are really those like hidden front bumpers, those smaller ones that just kind of fit in the center of the grille. Fab Force makes one, CBI makes one. I think Peak Suspension makes one, and they look really cool. And I mean, honestly, I'd love to get my hands on one. But if I hold off as long as I intend to before getting a front bumper, why not just jump all in and go for something like an ARB? And when I look at it, there is no ARB front bumper for a 2021 ZR2, unless you do some sort of like crazy modification where you basically just take the entire grille and swap it out for a Bison grille, with the smaller Chevrolet text and the filler panels on the sides. And if I end up doing that, what was the point in getting a 2021 that has been redesigned? So it's hard for me to justify that. But when you look at a Tacoma, there are so many options, and specifically ARB, as well as any other full front bumpers. You just, whatever you need, it's there for you. So if I'm looking at a TRD Sport, and I really intend to start modding it up at some point, the least I can do is rip off that front air dam, and the approach angle is better. The most I can do is take that TRD Sport and attach any modifications that I want from the Toyota community, and other than its suspension, when I'm done, you wouldn't even know that it was a TRD Sport. Rip off that sticker, throw on an ARB front bumper, throw on a back bumper, throw on some bigger tires with like a leveling kit or something, and boom, there you go. You have an off-road Tacoma. Minus the suspension. And I already talked about the suspension. It might not even be that bad anyway. And you know, after you've had some travels, then you can figure out whether or not you really want to get rid of the road tuned suspension for an off-road tuned suspension. So, you know, many other things to consider, and I don't think it's any surprise that if it were Toyota versus Chevy, the aftermarket community is much bigger for Toyota. So, you know, looking back at the year that I've had, I have plenty of mods on this truck, but I'm wondering, at least, if I'd have more, if I would have more on a truck like a Tacoma. All right, people, well, I'm done ranting about the truck. I've had it for a year. I still love it. It's still great, and it has performed flawlessly, okay? In the end, I will not be getting rid of it anytime soon, and who knows? Someday, I hope maybe I'll eat my words and, you know, getting the truck for the reasons I did, like its suspension and its capability. Hopefully I eat my words and I'll completely use the heck out of it. But for what I have done in the past year, I might have been able to go with something else. And I mentioned the Toyota Tacoma TRD Sport simply because it was one of the few trucks that I literally was looking at a year ago. But if we're talking about any truck in general, there are others I could have gone with, like a Colorado Z71 would have been fine, right? I've had my buddy Rob Rain on the channel plenty of times, and his Z71 does everything that this ZR2 does when we're together. So coulda, shoulda, woulda. You know, if we're talking about going with trucks that might have been possibly a little bit cheaper because of all the reasons I got this one and not entirely using it to its full potential. In the end, maybe I would have went back, told myself to jump on that Toyota Tacoma TRD Sport and just take it from a typical sport and mod it up to be an off-road truck, leaving the suspension for the long road trip, you know. So that's everything I got. I am going to pray to the overlanding gods and the community that I'm not ripped apart for saying that I transfer from Chevy to Toyota, when I made a video a couple months ago saying why I went to Chevy from Toyota. But the Chevy family so far has been really kind to me, and nobody has given me any trouble online. So do me a favor and keep that true. I love all trucks in general. I love travel. I love overlanding. I love camping. I don't care what you drive. If you're doing what you love, then that's really all that matters. So I appreciate you guys sticking around. I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you guys next time.